My father looked my 8-year-old daughter in the eye and told her she wasn't special enough for a birthday trip. 4 weeks later, he was standing on my porch with a certified letter in his shaking hands, begging me to undo what I'd done. My name is Corinne Albright. I'm 38 years old. I work as a dental hygienist at a family practice about 20 minutes from my house. I've been there 11 years now. Good benefits, steady paycheck. The kind of job that lets me keep the lights on and put food on the table without worrying too much about what happens next month. I'm also a single mom. Have been for 5 years now, ever since my ex-husband Travis decided that fatherhood wasn't really his thing and disappeared to start a new life somewhere in Arizona. Last I heard, he's got a new girlfriend and a motorcycle. Good for him. Meanwhile, I've got something better. I've got Brinley. Brinley is my daughter. She just turned 8, and she is the absolute center of my world. She's the kind of kid who notices when someone looks sad and asks if they need a hug. She draws pictures of animals and leaves them on my pillow as surprises. She's been through more than any kid her age should have to deal with, between her father leaving and growing up without much money. But she never complains. She just loves hard and hopes for the best. That's what makes this story so painful. Because Brinley spent years hoping her grandparents would love her the way they loved her cousin. She made them cards. She picked flowers from our yard and asked me to drive them over. She remembered their birthdays and their anniversary. She tried so hard, and none of it ever mattered. Let me tell you about my parents. My father's name is Gerald, but everyone calls him Jerry. He's 67, retired now. Used to work as an insurance adjuster, which means he spent 40 years finding reasons not to pay people what they were owed. That tells you a lot about who he is. He's charming when he wants to be, knows how to work a room, tell a joke, make people think he's the most generous guy in the world. But behind closed doors, he runs the family like a business. Everything is transactional. Everything has to benefit him. My mother is Paulette. She's 65, and she spent most of her working years as a secretary at our church. Sweet woman, everyone says, always bringing casseroles to families in need, always volunteering for bake sales. But here's the thing about my mother. She has never once stood up to my father. Not once in 43 years of marriage. Whatever Jerry says goes. Whatever Jerry wants, happens. And if you have a problem with it, Paulette will be the first to tell you that you're being too sensitive. Then there's my older sister, Denise. She's 42, 4 years older than me, which meant she got to be the firstborn, the trailblazer, the one who could do no wrong. Denise was homecoming queen. Denise got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. Denise married a man named Victor who owns 3 car dealerships in our county. They live in a 5-bedroom house with a pool, and they take vacations to places I've only seen in magazines. Denise has one daughter. Her name is Marin, and she's 9 years old. Marin is fine. She's not a bad kid. She's just been raised to believe that she deserves the best of everything, because that's how her grandparents have always treated her. Special trips, expensive presents, attention and praise at every family gathering. Brinley has watched this her entire life. She's watched Marin get things she could never dream of having. She's watched my parents light up when Marin walks into a room while barely acknowledging that Brinley exists. And for years, I made excuses. I told myself it wasn't that bad. I told myself Brinley didn't notice. I told myself that family was family, and you don't walk away from family. I was wrong about all of it. This is the story of how my father showed me exactly who he is. It's the story of how one comment at a Sunday dinner destroyed a relationship I'd spent decades trying to save. And it's the story of how I finally stopped begging for scraps of affection and started protecting my daughter the only way that actually mattered. I changed one document, just one, a few signatures, a few updated names, and it brought my parents to their knees. They thought they could treat my daughter like she was invisible. They thought I would keep quiet to keep the peace. They thought wrong. So let me take you back to the beginning. Let me tell you about the Sunday dinner that changed everything, the words my father said that he can never take back, and the moment I realized that loving your family and protecting your child are not always the same thing. Sometimes you have to choose, and I chose Brinley. Growing up in the Albright house, I learned early that love was not distributed equally. It was measured, calculated, and handed out based on criteria I never fully understood but always failed to meet. Denise was the star. From the moment I can remember, everything revolved around her. She was the pretty one. the smart one, the one my father introduced to his colleagues at company picnics while I stood off to the side holding a paper plate. When Denise made the cheerleading squad, my parents threw her a party. When I made honor roll, my mother said that was nice and asked me to set the table for dinner. I used to think if I just worked harder, achieved more, became more impressive, they would finally see me, so I pushed myself. I got good grades. I stayed out of trouble. I put myself through dental hygiene school while working part-time at a grocery store. When I got pregnant with Brinley, I was terrified to tell my parents, not because I was ashamed of my baby, but because I knew they would find a way to make it about how I disappointed them, and they did. My father's exact words were, "Well, I hope Travis knows what he's getting into." Not congratulations, not excitement about their second grandchild, just doubt, just the assumption that I would mess this up like I apparently messed up everything else. When Travis left 3 years later, my mother's response was, "I can't say I'm surprised." No offer to help, no sympathy for what I was going through, just a confirmation of what they had always believed. Denise was the success. I was the cautionary tale. But I built a life anyway. I found a good job. I made friends at work who became like family. I raised Brinley in a small but clean apartment, and then eventually a little house with a yard just big enough for her to play in. I did everything on my own, and I did it well. But none of that ever seemed to register with my parents. The favoritism carried over to the next generation so seamlessly, it was almost impressive. When Maren was born, my parents were at the hospital within hours. They brought flowers and balloons and a teddy bear that cost more than my weekly groceries. When Brinley was born 2 years later, they showed up the next day, stayed for 20 minutes, and left because my father had a golf game. When Maren turned 5, my parents rented out a room at the country club and invited 30 people. There was a princess theme with a real tiara and a 3-tier cake. When Brinley turned 5, they mailed a card with a $20 bill inside. The card was addressed to Briley. They spelled her name wrong. When Maren started taking dance lessons, my parents offered to pay for private instruction. They attended every recital and sat in the front row. When Brinley joined the art club at school and had her first little showcase, I invited my parents 3 weeks in advance. They said they would try to make it. They never showed up. Later, my mother said they forgot. She did not apologize. I kept track of these things, not on paper, but in my heart. Every missed birthday, every forgotten event, every moment where Maren received something special while Brinley got nothing. I told myself it was not a competition. I told myself that comparing was unhealthy. I told myself that my parents loved both grandchildren, just in different ways. But Brinley noticed. Kids always notice. She asked me once when she was 6 why Grandma and Grandpa liked Maren more. I felt my heart crack right down the center. I told her that was not true, that grandparents sometimes show love differently, that it did not mean they loved her any less. I lied to my daughter to protect her from a truth I was not ready to face myself. The Sunday dinner happened in early October. The leaves were just starting to turn. Brinley had been talking about her birthday for weeks. She was turning 8, and she had one wish. She wanted to go somewhere special with her grandparents, not Disneyland, not anywhere expensive. She had mentioned the zoo, just the zoo, an hour of their time, a small adventure that would make her feel like she mattered. I called my mother a few days before the dinner. I said Brinley has been hoping you and Dad might take her to the zoo for her birthday. It would mean the world to her. My mother's response was non-committal. "We'll see, honey. You know how your father's back has been acting up." I accepted it because I always accepted it. I told myself maybe this time would be different. Maybe they would surprise us. When I walked into my parents' house that Sunday, I realized very quickly that the only surprise was going to be how badly they could hurt my little girl. The moment I walked through my parents' front door, I knew something was happening. There was an energy in the room that felt celebratory, excited, like a surprise party about to be sprung. Maren was bouncing on her heels in the living room. Denise was holding up her phone, ready to record. My parents were standing together with huge smiles on their faces, and my father was holding something in his hand. 4 tickets, bright and colorful. The Disneyland logo unmistakable even from across the room. My father waved them in the air like he was showing off a winning lottery ticket. "Maren, sweetheart, guess where Grandma and Grandpa are taking you for your birthday?" Maren screamed. Actually screamed. She jumped up and down, her blonde curls bouncing, and threw herself into my father's arms. "Disneyland! Oh my gosh, Disneyland! Thank you, thank you, thank you!" Denise was filming everything. "Say thank you to Grandma and Grandpa, baby. Let them see how excited you are." My mother was beaming. My father was laughing. Everyone was so happy, so wrapped up in Marin's joy, that nobody noticed me standing frozen in the doorway. Nobody noticed Brinley standing beside me, her little hand gripping mine, watching everything with wide eyes. I could not move. I could not speak. My parents had told me they could not take Brinley to the zoo because of my father's back, but they could take Marin to Disneyland, a 3-day trip, hours of walking, standing in lines, but his back was fine for that. His back was fine for the special grandchild. Brinley tugged on my sleeve. Her voice was so small, so confused, it barely rose above the noise of Marin's celebration. "Mommy, what about my birthday next week?" The room went quiet. Not completely silent, but quiet enough that I knew people had heard her. My mother's smile flickered. Denise lowered her phone slightly. My father turned to look at Brinley like he had just noticed she existed. And then he laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. That might have been easier to process. It was dismissive, casual, like Brinley had said something silly and childish that did not deserve a real answer. "Honey, we only do this for special grandkids." 7 words. That is all it took. 7 words to break something inside my daughter that I am not sure will ever fully heal. I watched Brinley's face change. First confusion. She did not understand what he meant. Then realization. The slow, horrible understanding that her grandfather had just told her she was not special. Not to him, not to her grandmother, not to anyone in that room except me. She did not cry. Not yet. She just went very still. Her grip on my hand tightened until I could feel her little fingernails pressing into my palm. My mother jumped in immediately, her voice high and nervous. "Jerry didn't mean it like that. Marin's birthday is a big one, sweetheart. 9 is a milestone, you understand." I heard my own voice, flat and strange. "Brinley is turning 8, not 9. And Marin just turned 9 last month. There's nothing milestone about it." Denise rolled her eyes. "Come on, Corinne, don't make this weird. It's not a competition." But it was. It had always been a competition, and my daughter had been losing since the day she was born. She just did not know the game was rigged until that moment. I looked at my father. He was not apologizing. He was not backtracking. He was looking at me with that familiar expression of mild annoyance, like I was being dramatic, like I was overreacting, like the problem was me and not the words that had just come out of his mouth. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn his approval, all the times I had bitten my tongue and swallowed my hurt and told myself that keeping the peace was more important than my own feelings. I had sacrificed my dignity over and over again to maintain a relationship with people who saw me as less than, and now they were doing it to my daughter, right in front of me, without even a hint of shame. I made a decision in that moment. I did not announce it. I did not make a scene. I simply said, "Brinley, go get your jacket. We're leaving." My father scoffed. "Oh, here we go. Corinne's making everything about her again." Denise added, "You don't have to ruin Marin's moment just because you're jealous." I did not respond. I took my daughter's hand, walked out the front door, and drove home in silence, while Brinley cried quietly in the back seat. She did not ask questions. She did not say a word. She just cried, and I let her, because I did not have any words that would make it better. But I had a plan. They just did not know it yet. That night, after Brinley finally cried herself to sleep, I sat alone at my kitchen table and stared at the wall for a long time. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air itself is waiting for something to happen. I replayed my father's words over and over in my head. We only do this for special grandkids. I thought about Brinley's face, the confusion turning to hurt, the hurt turning to understanding. My 8-year-old daughter now knew, without any doubt, that her grandparents did not love her the way they loved her cousin. That knowledge would stay with her forever. I could not undo it. I could not protect her from it. It had already happened. But I could make sure it never happened again. I had spent my entire life trying to earn my parents' approval, trying to be good enough, trying to prove that I deserved the same love they gave Denise so freely. And where had it gotten me? Nowhere. I was still the disappointment, still the afterthought. And now my daughter was inheriting that same position, that same pain, that same invisible ranking system that put her at the bottom through no fault of her own. I was done. Not angry done, not dramatic done, just finished. Like a book I had been forcing myself to read for 38 years, and I finally accepted that the ending was never going to change. I got up from the table and walked to my filing cabinet. In the bottom drawer, underneath old tax returns and Brinley's birth certificate, there was a manila folder I had not touched in 3 years. Inside was my last will and testament. I had drawn it up when Brinley was 5, right after Travis left. My attorney had asked me all the standard questions. Who should manage your estate? Who should be the guardian of your minor child if something happens to you? Who should receive your life insurance payout? I had answered without hesitation. My parents, Gerald and Paulette Albright. They were family. They were stable. They were the obvious choice. I had also listed them as the beneficiaries of my life insurance policy through work. $200,000. Not a fortune, but enough to take care of Brinley if the worst happened, enough to pay for her education, her needs, her future. I sat back down at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of me. I read through the documents slowly. My parents' names were everywhere. Guardians, beneficiaries, trustees. I had handed them everything because I believed, despite all evidence to the contrary, that they would do right by my daughter. Now I knew the truth. If something happened to me, Brinley would go to people who saw her as a burden. She would grow up in a house where Marin got everything and she got leftovers. She would be reminded every single day that she was not special, and my parents would collect $200,000 for the privilege of making her feel worthless. I could not let that happen. Monday morning, I called my attorney before I even left for work. I told her I needed to update my will immediately. She asked if everything was okay. I said no, but it was going to be. We met that Wednesday during my lunch break. I told her everything, the years of favoritism, the Disneyland trip, the comment that broke my daughter's heart. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she nodded slowly and said she understood completely. I removed my parents as guardians. In their place, I named my friend Yolanda. She was a dental assistant at my practice, 10 years older than me, and she had treated Brinley like a niece since the day she was born. She came to birthday parties. She remembered Brinley's favorite color and her favorite foods. She showed up. That was more than my parents had ever done. I removed my parents as beneficiaries of my life insurance. The money would now go into a trust for Brinley, with Yolanda as the trustee. Every penny would be used for my daughter's future. My parents would receive nothing. Then I did something my attorney warned me about. I added a statement of intent, a written explanation of why I was making these changes. I described the favoritism. I described the pattern of neglect. I described, in clear and specific language, what my father had said to my daughter and why that comment was the final straw. My attorney looked at me when I finished dictating. If you send them a copy of this, it will start a war. I signed my name at the bottom of the document. Good. Let them see exactly who they are in writing. 2 weeks later, I mailed a certified copy of the updated will to my parents along with a letter. The letter was short. It said they had made their choice and now I was making mine. I told them this was my final decision and I would not be discussing it further. Then I waited. 4 weeks passed. I did not hear from my parents. No phone calls, no texts, no surprise visits. Part of me wondered if they had even opened the envelope. Part of me wondered if they had read it, shrugged, and moved on with their lives because I had never really mattered to them anyway. Then came a Thursday evening in early November. Brinley was at the kitchen table doing her homework. I was standing at the stove making spaghetti, her favorite. The house smelled like garlic bread and tomato sauce. It was peaceful, normal, the kind of ordinary evening I had learned to treasure. And then someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of desperate, aggressive banging that makes your heart jump into your throat. Brinley looked up from her worksheet with wide eyes. I told her to stay at the table and walked to the door with my hands shaking slightly. I looked through the peephole and saw my father's face, red and furious. My mother stood behind him, mascara streaked down her cheeks like she had been crying the entire drive over. My father was holding something in his hand, the certified envelope ripped open. The documents crumpled like he had been squeezing them in his fist. I opened the door but did not invite them in. I stood in the doorway with my arms crossed and waited. My father did not waste time with greetings. "What the hell is this, Corinne? You're cutting us out over a joke?" His voice was loud enough that I was sure my neighbors could hear. I stayed calm. I had been preparing for this moment since the day I signed those papers. "It wasn't a joke to Brinley. This is insane. You can't just do this. We're her grandparents. We have rights." "You have nothing. Grandparents don't have legal rights to someone else's child. And even if you did, you lost any moral claim to my daughter when you told her she wasn't special enough for your love." My mother pushed forward, her voice high and desperate. "Corinne, please. You have to understand. Your father didn't mean it the way it sounded. You know how he talks. He says things without thinking. We love Brinley. We love both our grandchildren." I looked at her. This woman who had never once stood up for me, who had watched her husband favor Denise for 40 years and never said a word, who had made excuses for every slight, every dismissal, every moment of cruelty disguised as carelessness. "Really, Mom, you love Brinley? Then tell me when her birthday is." Silence. "What grade is she in?" More silence. "What is her teacher's name? What is her favorite animal? What did she ask for Christmas last year?" My mother opened her mouth and closed it again. She had no answers. She did not know my daughter at all. Neither of them did. My father changed tactics. His voice dropped lower, more controlled, but I could hear the anger simmering underneath. "This is about the money, isn't it? You're trying to punish us. You're trying to take what's ours." I almost laughed. "Dad, the money goes into a trust for Brinley. I don't get a single dollar. This has nothing to do with punishing you. This is about making sure that if something happens to me, my daughter is raised by someone who actually loves her, not people who see her as a second-class citizen in her own family." My father's face changed. The anger flickered into something else, something I had never seen on him before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. Not about the money, about the document itself, about the written record of everything he had done, spelled out in legal language that could be read by attorneys and judges and anyone else who might need to see it. "If people see this," he started, "then they'll know exactly who you are." My mother started sobbing. She begged me to reconsider. She said they would change. They would spend more time with Brinley. They would take her on trips. They would make it up to her. I shook my head. "You had 8 years to make it up to her. You had 8 years to treat her like she mattered. Instead, you made her feel invisible. And now you're only here because you're scared of what this document says about you." My father threatened to fight the will in court. He said he would get a lawyer. He said I would regret this. I told him to go ahead. A court case would put everything in public record, every detail, every example of favoritism, every word of my statement of intent. He went pale. I told them both to leave. When they did not move, I said I would call the police. My mother grabbed my father's arm and pulled him toward the car. He was still shouting threats as he backed down the driveway, nearly hitting my mailbox in his rush to escape. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to making dinner for my daughter. The fallout came fast and hard. Denise called the next morning, practically screaming into the phone before I even finished saying hello. She called me vindictive. She called me jealous. She said I was tearing the family apart over a harmless comment that I had blown completely out of proportion. I let her finish. Then I asked her one question. "If Mom and Dad had told Marin she wasn't special enough for a trip, would you still be defending them?" She hung up without answering. I did not call her back. Over the following weeks, the family splintered in ways I never expected. Cousins I had not spoken to in years started reaching out. Turns out I was not the only one who had noticed my parents' favoritism. I was just the first one to do something about it. My Aunt Linda, my father's own sister, called to say she was proud of me. She told me Gerald had always been like this, even when they were kids. He picked favorites and punished anyone who questioned him. She said she wished she had stood up to him decades ago. My parents tried different approaches as the weeks turned into months. First came the gifts. Expensive toys for Brinley, delivered to my doorstep with no card, no note, no apology. Just objects meant to buy forgiveness. I donated every single one to a children's charity. Brinley never even saw them. Then came the flying monkeys. Family friends who called to tell me I was being too harsh. Church members who said forgiveness was the Christian thing to do. A distant uncle who suggested I was hurting Brinley more than my parents ever had by keeping her from her grandparents. I listened politely and then explained that I was protecting my daughter from people who had proven they could not be trusted with her heart. Most of them stopped calling after that. My parents never apologized, not once. My father sent a letter through his attorney threatening legal action, but nothing ever came of it. I think he realized that a court case would only expose everything he had spent years hiding. The carefully constructed image of the generous patriarch would crumble under the weight of documented evidence. He could not risk that. The hardest part of all this was helping Brinley understand. She asked me why Grandma and Grandpa stopped coming around. She asked if it was her fault. That question nearly broke me. I sat her down on her bed and held both her hands in mine. I told her the truth in words an 8-year-old could understand. I said that some people have trouble loving fairly. Some people play favorites, and it has nothing to do with the people they overlook. It is a problem inside them, not inside the people they hurt. I told her she had done nothing wrong. She had been a wonderful granddaughter. The failure belonged entirely to them. She cried a little. Then she hugged me and said she was glad I was her mom. I held her so tight I thought I might never let go. For her 8th birthday, I could not afford Disneyland. I could not even afford a big party. But I took the day off work and we went to the zoo together, just the two of us. We fed the giraffes and watched the penguins waddle around their enclosure. She spent almost an hour in the butterfly pavilion, standing perfectly still while a blue morpho landed on her shoulder. At the end of the day, she looked up at me with the biggest smile and said this was the best birthday she had ever had. That was when I finally understood something I should have realized years ago. I had spent so long trying to get my parents to make Brinley feel special. I had begged and hinted and hoped they would step up and give her the love she deserved, but the only person whose effort truly mattered was mine. I did not need their validation. Neither did my daughter. I do not know if my parents and I will ever reconcile. That door is not completely closed, but they would have to walk through it with genuine remorse and changed behavior. So far, they have shown no interest in doing either, and I have made peace with that. My daughter knows she is special. Not because her grandparents took her on expensive trips, not because anyone external told her she was worthy. She knows because her mother shows her every single day, through presence, through protection, through the willingness to walk away from people who would make her feel small. Some families lift you up. Some families teach you hard lessons. Mine taught Brinley the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you simply will not. And when that happens, you do not beg for scraps. You walk away with your dignity, your boundaries, and the people who actually matter. If this story resonated with you, I hope you will share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time you had to protect someone you love from people who should have loved them too. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story. Your support means everything. Thank you for listening. Take care of each other. And remember, you are always special to the people who truly see you.